I've told parts of this to two people in my life, my girlfriend and my therapist. Both of them think I'm exaggerating. I wish I were. It would be so much easier if this was just my overactive anxiety trying to give meaning to a random scary day. But I know what I heard that afternoon. I know what my classmates heard. And I know that all clear wasn't meant for us. This happened my sophomore year. Our high school was one of those big suburban places with a name that sounded like a gated community, Maple Ridge High, even though our campus was mostly concrete, chain-link fences, and a football field that always smelled like rubber and old sweat. The building had been added onto so many times it felt like a compromise with itself. The original 1970s block had brown brick and narrow prison-style windows. The 90s gave us a bright white library with skylights. Then they kept tacking on wings, science labs, a daycare for teen parents, a vocational auto shop. Our room numbering system was like a scavenger hunt designed by a bored demon. We did lockdown drills every month, same as every other school. The kind where you pull the shades, move away from the door, and pretend you're invisible while trying not to giggle or text. Everyone joked about them because if you didn't, you had to think about why you were practicing hiding. You had to think about the part where maybe it wouldn't be a drill someday. It wasn't a drill that day. Or if it was, someone decided to make it as real as possible. I was in yearbook during last block. It was the most laid-back class on my schedule, a mix of artsy kids, athletes who needed an easy A, and a handful of seniors whose spirits had already moved on. We worked out of room 214, a converted storage space at the end of a hallway in the old wing. Ms. Patel was our advisor, mid-30s, kind eyes, hair always in a bun that looked like it was barely holding back a storm. She'd let us play music quietly at our desks as long as we met deadlines. Most days smelled like coffee and the warm plastic scent of laminators. That afternoon was nothing special. We were arguing about senior quotes and whether we should let Marcus put his weird inside joke on page 35. "Just put 'I'm sorry, Kimberly,' and be done," he kept saying. Jordan and I were cropping photos of the homecoming pep rally. The elk, our mascot, was doing a dab in one of the shots. That costume always looked a little off to me. The antlers were too long and bent at mismatched angles like someone had melted them and stuck them back on. At 1:58, someone in the hallway pulled the fire alarm by accident. It happens once a week at Maple Ridge. A freshman scrapes a backpack against the plastic housing, and everybody gets to go stand in the parking lot for 10 minutes. We all groaned, started to get up, and then the intercom clicked on with this grating pop. Maple Ridge High School, initiate lockdown level 2. Everything froze. We looked at each other, then at Ms. Patel. The phrase was wrong. During drills, they always said, "Teachers, please initiate lockdown procedures." I know that sounds like a small difference, but the tone was new, and so was the wording. Level 2. I didn't even know we had levels. "What's level 2? Jordan whispered. Ms. Patel didn't answer. She was already moving. Shades down, door locked, lights off. It was automatic, a muscle memory built from too many practices. "Everyone against the wall, away from sight," she said, voice low and steady. Phones on silent, no vibrations. Chairs scraped. My Nike squeaked against linoleum and sounded loud enough to get us all killed. We huddled between the cabinets and the big metal flat files where we kept old yearbook layouts. Ms. Patel slid the heavy rolling whiteboard in front of the thin rectangular window in the door, and then rolled a long cabinet in front of that. She kept a rubber wedge for the door and jammed it under the handle like she was trying to stop the ocean. The intercom crackled again. It was the principal's voice, Dr. Leary, but it sounded tight. "This is not a drill," he said. "Repeat, this is not a drill." And then the halls went dead quiet. The first 10 minutes were the worst, only because they felt real in a way drills never do. The kids you joke with go silent. You realize how loud breathing is, how long a swallow takes. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed, and everybody flinched. The emergency exit lights kicked into this dim red glow that made everything look like we were underwater. There was a little rectangular motion sensor outside our door, and it kept flicking from green to yellow to green. It did that when a person walked by. We'd all seen it during class and used it to time when Ms. Patel was coming back from the copier. That afternoon, it went yellow for a full 2 minutes and stayed there. Jordan texted me a question mark even though I was 2 feet away. We didn't want to make any noise. A second later, he sent, "Level 2? I typed, "No clue." Then, because I couldn't help it, "Dumb name." The intercom made that small pop again, and we all held our breath. A voice said, "Students in room 214, remain calm. We see you." I swear my heart stopped. Ms. Patel's head snapped toward us, eyes wide, and then snapped toward the ceiling like she expected there to be cameras. There weren't any in our room. I'd checked when I was printing tickets for the spring musical. The camera in the hallway had a blinking red light we could see under the door, but inside, nothing. Ms. Patel put a finger to her lips. We didn't move. No one even shifted weight. I could hear the quiet click of watch hands and the soft static of someone's hair against a hoodie. The intercom voice continued. "If you are in room 214, do not approach the door. Do not look out the window. Remain where you are." The words were right, but the tone was wrong. It was flatter than Dr. Leary's usual wonky radio voice. Less cadence, more copy-paste, like someone was reading from a list while trying not to sound bored. If he wanted to calm us, he didn't. It felt like being told not to look down by someone who'd already let go of your hand. I realized my phone was vibrating in my pocket. I pulled it out. Unknown number, no name. The text preview showed just 2 words, in all caps. All clear. I didn't open it. I locked the screen and looked up to see Jordan staring at his phone too. He showed me. Same text. Octavia, over by the paper cutter, pressed a hand over her mouth and pointed to her screen. Same message. From numbers none of us recognized. It would have been a stupid prank if it hadn't landed so hard, so off, so soon. Ms. Patel's phone buzzed on her desk where she'd left it when the intercom first spoke, and we all watched it skitter an inch across the fake wood grain that cheap little dance phones do when they vibrate. She crawled to it on elbows and pulled it under the counter, looked at the screen, and slid it into her pocket without a word. 10 more minutes. The motion sensor outside our door clicked yellow again. The hallway camera was old and fed into a set of monitors in the library office. The librarians used to watch it the way security guards watched mall footage in 80s movies. But the library had closed for renovations in January, and since then the monitors had been shoved into a corner of our room because technology goes to yearbook, which was administration speak for, where can we dump this? They weren't plugged in. Ms. Patel had been using one as a stand for the laminator. That mattered later, in a way. For a while, we just breathed together. Someone's shoulder started shaking. I think it was Mara. She'd been in the front office once when a parent came in and screamed at everyone for 15 minutes. And after that, she had this thing with shouting and slamming doors. Jordan nudged me with his foot and mouthed, "She okay?" I nodded like I had any idea what okay meant right then. The intercom popped again, softer this time. "Students in room 214, the voice said, like it had been on hold and had to remind itself who we were. "This is campus security. We need you to open the door." We did not move. Ms. Patel shook her head so gently the bun at the back of her head didn't even sway. There was a pause, static, a throat clearing, something, and then the voice said, "Code word, turquoise." My stomach flipped. We had weekly code words, distributed by email to teachers in case they needed to verify the person on the other side of the door was legit. If the person knew the word, you could unlock. Or that was the idea. That week's word wasn't turquoise. It was paperclip. I knew because Ms. Patel kept the email open sometimes, and I'd glanced at it that morning while waiting for the printer. She knew too. Her eyes found mine. It was the quickest look, but it said, "No." "Ms. Patel," the voice said, again too flat, like it was reading our names off the teacher schedule printout. "Please respond." She didn't. The room had turned to stone. I could taste the metal of the filing cabinet against my tongue, even though I wasn't touching it. My mouth had gone dry in a way that made swallowing feel like a choice. We waited. The handle on the door twitched, then turned. It shouldn't have. Ms. Patel had twisted the lock to vertical. She had jammed the wedge, but the handle moved anyway with this slow, patient torque, like whoever was outside had all the time in the world. Whoever was outside scraped something across the narrow viewing window. Not a key or a coin. It sounded like you hear in videos when someone runs a fork down a ceramic plate. The window was covered by the whiteboard, but the sound found us anyway. I grabbed Jordan's wrist and he grabbed mine back hard enough that one of his knuckles cracked. "Students in room 214, the intercom said. "If you are hearing this, it is safe to exit. Teachers at this time, please begin evacuating students to the gymnasium." The words were the exact words we heard at the end of drills. Like, exact. Same order. Same run-ons. But two things. One, we could still hear the handle trying to turn. Two, there was no chime. There's always a chime when an announcement starts and ends. 3 ascending notes at the start, 3 descending at the end. There was no end chime. The voice just stopped. Like whoever was making the announcements had cut their own mic mid-sentence. We stayed where we were. Ms. Patel whispered, "Not yet." Mercifully, nothing else happened for a while. The handle gave up. The motion sensor went back to green. A car alarm honked 3 times from the parking lot and then died. I let myself breathe for real, deep, thinking maybe it was over. That's when my phone lit again. Unknown number. I opened it this time because my curiosity outpaced my self-preservation by a mile. It was a photo of our classroom, taken from the back corner by the supply closet. I knew that angle because I'd taken the exact same photo at the beginning of the year to send to my cousin who was starting yearbook at her school. But this wasn't my photo. This one was today. The whiteboard wedged against the door. Our backpacks lumped in a pile. Jordan's hoodie balled up like a pillow. And you could see us. Our shapes. not faces. We were down low, a mess of knees and shoulders. But you could recognize people by their clothes. You could see Ms. Patel crouched by the counter, her bun framed against the shadow of the laminator. You could see the way Octavia tucked her socks over her leggings like she was freezing. You could see my watch, the cheap stainless band from Amazon. The timestamp said the photo had been taken 1 minute ago. I showed Jordan. He didn't make a sound, just squeezed my wrist again. Ms. Patel saw our faces, and we showed her the phone. She didn't gasp or swear or do any of the things that would have made me trust an adult less in that moment. She just said, quiet as a prayer, "We're going in the closet." The supply closet was wide but shallow, packed with foam display boards, boxes of toner, tripods, and a stack of old monitors. We had to move the monitors to fit everyone. Ms. Patel slid open the closet door, and all of us, 12 kids, folded and pressed ourselves inside. The smell was dust and old paper and something else, stale sweet like spilled sports drink. When we were just barely in, Miss Patel slid the door closed, but stopped an inch from shut. "Do not touch your phones," she whispered. "Put them on the floor." We did, and the closet filled with a soft, syncopated tapping as glass touched linoleum. "Count to 60 with me in your heads," she said. "Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. It was the same thing she did before tests. Mara's breathing steadied a little. Mine didn't. On count 32, the intercom popped again. "Students in room 214, the voice said. "We know you are in the closet." Jordan squeezed his eyes shut. Octavia's hand found mine. Someone whimpered and swallowed it fast. "If you do not open the door, we will assist," the voice went on. Something breathed on the other side of the closet door. I don't know how else to say that. The classroom was quiet. The hall was quiet. But just beyond the thin sliding door, a human breath went in and out like a slow saw. I could feel it in the little gap where the door hadn't fully closed. The air was damp with it, like it had traveled a long way through vents, picking up old water and dust. "Campus security," a voice said. Not the intercom now. This was inches away. It boomed through the hollow space of the closet door like someone pressing their mouth to the wood. "Password," Miss Patel said instantly. Her voice was steady, like she'd rehearsed that word. Maybe she had. Maybe every teacher in America spends their days practicing which syllables mean we get to live. "Weekly password," the voice said. A beat. Bluebird. Bluebird had been the code last semester. I remember because Ms. Patel had made a dumb joke about it. Bluebird is the word. She'd grinned and waited for someone to groan. We did, but that was months ago. "No," Ms. Patel said. Silence. Then, a slow drag of fingernails across wood. It made my molars ache. The drag stopped. The breath didn't. Somebody's phone buzzed against the floor. Then another one. Then all of them. They lit up like a fleet of tiny flashlights down there, under our knees and feet. I stared at the closest screen and read the preview from the unknown number. Open. A new message hit before I could tell my eyes not to read it. Open. 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 It turned into a cascade. Every phone. Open. Open. Open like rain on the roof of a car. Ms. Patel's jaw tightened. She didn't tell us not to look, didn't tell us anything. She just slid her fingers along the floor and palmed her phone. Then she pressed it flat against the inside of her forearm, screen down. The breath pulled back from the door suddenly, like it had been interrupted. The intercom popped again, loud enough to make my ears ring. "Teachers," the voice said, "at this time, please escort your students to the gymnasium." There was the chime. 3 descending notes, the ones they always play at the end. This time too fast, rushed, like whoever was doing it wanted to get the performance over with. Miss Patel didn't move. Neither did we. 10 minutes later, emergency responders flooded the parking lot. We didn't know that then. We were in a closet pretending to be dead. But we learned afterward that the district called everyone within a 5-mile radius to tell them to stay away. Parents texted us, and we didn't answer. Sirens went, but the building swallowed their sound until the only thing that meant anything was breath on the other side of a door. It didn't come back. Not that way. Instead, there was a different sound. The tiniest crackle of plastic on plastic above our heads. Miss Patel and I both looked up at the same time. There was a vent at the top of the closet wall, one of those rectangular grids that look like a waffle, and something on the other side of it shifted. All I could see was black. The duct was unlit, dust caked to the ribs, but I felt the pressure change when something moved past, pushing old air down into our faces. It smelled like the gym after a long game. Sour. Big. We'd thought the sound came from the door. Maybe it had. But something had found the other way in too. "Do not move," Miss Patel whispered. We didn't. My shoulders had gone from ache to burn to numb. Something in my foot was asleep, and the pins and needles made me want to kick just to feel anything that wasn't fear. The vent made the tiniest click, like fingernails on metal. Then the unseen thing pressed its face. God, please let it have been a face, up against the grid. I didn't see it. You know how you can feel someone on the other side of a door sometimes? That pressure against the separation. It was like that, but upside down. The attention of something above us. Measuring. My phone buzzed at my feet again. I ignored it for the first time in my life. The breath above moved away as quietly as it had come. The intercom crackled to life. "Students in room 214, the voice said cheerfully, like if it put a smile on the words we would forget we were hiding from our own building. "District personnel will be opening your door. Please do not be alarmed." I expected a knock. I expected a key. What we heard was the scrape of chair legs and furniture sliding across tile. Only we hadn't put chairs and desks in front of the door. We'd used the whiteboard in the cabinet, and the sound was wrong for those. Too many points of contact, too many clacks and ticks, like somebody had poured a box of Legos and then pushed them around. "Do not open," Miss Patel whispered, soft enough that the word felt more like air than language. The cabinet we'd rolled against the whiteboard shuddered. Then the whiteboard groaned. Then there was a single heavy thud, like someone had thrown their shoulder against the door, with an athlete's lack of patience. The only thing between whatever was in the hall and our closet now was a lock that should have held, and a human decision that would or wouldn't. Then, unexpectedly, a sound I recognized. The little crunchy pop of the mascot head being set on a hard surface. I knew that sound because I'd worn the elk head once to pep rally. The foam creaked like a foam cooler, and the plastic eyes made a click when you set it down. We weren't imagining it. Something set the elk head on the counter by the sink. I almost laughed because it was so dumb. Then I saw the shadow through the sliver of closet door gap. A dark oval with points. The antlers. The head turned toward us. We went to that school for years. We'd seen the mascot 100 times. But the eyes on the head are mesh circles, not real eyes. And in that moment they reflected this razor slice of light from the emergency exit sign and looked like something alive watching us. "Okay," Jordan mouthed. It wasn't a word so much as an exhale. His eyes were big and shiny in the red glow. A hand slid into the sliver of gap where the closet door hadn't fully closed. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear anyone breathing anymore. Just a hand, palm up at first, fingertips pale and dusty like it had been under a couch for a decade and just now come out. The fingernails were ragged, chewed or torn, and there was a stamp of blue ink on the side of the index finger, like the smudge you get from a marker. It didn't grope wildly. It didn't scratch. It did something so normal it made bile surge up in the back of my throat. It tapped. Once. Twice. 3 times. A little rhythm we all knew because every kid at Maple Ridge tapped it on desks when they were bored. Da-da-da-da-da. Our football chant. The thing at games we did without thinking. A call to attention. It tapped the school spirit beat on our closet door, like it was trying to get us to sing along. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. The tapping stopped, and the fingers withdrew. There was the sound of something being lifted from the counter. Foam creak, plastic click, and then the soft scrape of the mascot head being dragged along the floor. It bumped into the closet door, gentle. I pictured the elk face pressed to the gap and decided if I looked I would never sleep again. Then the hallway outside erupted. Footsteps, radio static, a shout that sounded human enough to be human. "Police," someone called. "Call out if you're in there." We didn't. You're not supposed to, even if the person says the right things. Ms. Patel's shoulders loosened a degree I could feel against my own. Keys rattled. Real keys. The chaotic sound of 24 metal teeth trying to find a home. The door handle tested. A knock, quick, in 2 sets. Miss Patel held up a finger. "Wait." Then she said, loud enough to be heard, "Password." "Paperclip," a man's voice said without hesitation. "It's Sergeant Henson. I'm here with the fire department." Ms. Patel didn't move for a beat. Then she said, "What room is on the other side of this wall?" "Makeup storage," he said. "Printing. You're in yearbook. 214. The window is covered by a whiteboard and a rolling cabinet. I can hear you. Please move the cabinet." We didn't move the cabinet. We couldn't. It would have taken all of us in 40 seconds, and we were wedged in a closet with an elk head inhaling on the other side of something thin enough to be a suggestion. The keys kept rattling until the right one found the lock. The handle turned. The wedge held for half a second, and then slid because wedges only work if the person outside isn't willing to force the issue. The door opened inward 2 inches. The cabinet moved an inch and thunked against the whiteboard. "Back up," the man's voice said, breathless but professional. "We're coming in." The door opened all the way. 2 firefighters in helmets and turnout coats filled the frame, followed by a uniformed cop I recognized from the football games, where he pretended to be bored and actually watched everything. The room flooded with light from the hall. Not normal fluorescence, but portable lamps. Ms. Patel stood, and the firefighters put up their hands like you would for a skittish animal and said, "It's all right." It wasn't. but their faces looked like they wanted it to be. They opened the closet. The cop looked at us with eyes that had seen a lot of dumb teenagers do a lot of dumb things and still found the energy to look kind. "You did right," he said. "You did perfect." We unfolded ourselves, joints popping like knuckles. My legs tingled back to life in stabbing waves. I kept waiting for the elk to be at my feet, but it wasn't. The head was gone. That would bother me for months in a very specific, very private way. The hallway outside room 214 looked like a movie set after the crew had gone home and the janitors hadn't come yet. Cables from the portable lights snaked across the floor. 2 more cops stood by the intersection, hands low but ready. An assistant principal I barely knew hovered, pale and damp, in a way vice principals are always pale and damp. "Where's Dr. Leary?" Ms. Patel asked immediately. Her voice shook now. "Not much. Enough." "At the command post," said the assistant principal. "They're accounting for everyone. Come on, we're going to the gym." We did. A conga line of fear and relief. When we passed the motion sensor, it went yellow and then green, like it was waving goodbye. The gym was chaos. Teachers and students huddled in class clusters on the bleachers, while administrators tried to take attendance by yelling it into radios, and then yelling again when the radios didn't work in the cinderblock cavern. Parents pushed against the police tape at the far door, shouting names of kids who were 200 feet away and couldn't go to them yet. People were crying in little circles, shoulders squared inward. Dr. Leary stood at the far end with a woman from the district. He looked white as paper. The woman looked like she didn't know where to put her hands. They were both talking to a news camera that had somehow, impossibly, already arrived in the middle of that mess. The intercom. Yes, the gym has one too. Popped. "All clear," said the voice. Not the PA announcer at games, not the assistant principal with his morning announcements voice. The same flat voice from our room. No hello, no context, just those 2 words. Every adult in the room turned to look at a speaker like they were going to physically pull the sound out and interrogate it. Dr. Leary walked to the nearest mic panel, jabbed a button and said, "Who is on this line?" Silence. Then 3 descending notes. End of announcement. The cops looked at each other in a way I understood even as a dumb 16-year-old. Not relief, not fear, but the recognition of a thing that did not match any of the things they had been taught to expect. They finished roll call. They let parents in waves. We got to leave around 4:30, hours after the first level 2. My mom crushed me into her ribs and said my full name in a way that sounded like a prayer and a scolding at once. We drove home past 3 ambulances and a news van. The red and blue of it all stained the inside of my eyelids. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the refrigerator cycle and the neighbor's dog bark and the way a house makes noises you only hear when you're trying not to. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. All clear. I blocked it. 20 seconds later, a new unknown number texted. All clear. I blocked that one too. You can guess how this goes. By 2:45, I had blocked 8 numbers. I turned the whole phone off and lay there with the room suddenly too quiet. The next morning, school was canceled, out of an abundance of caution, which is how adults say, we need a second to breathe without admitting we do. By afternoon, rumors had hit orbit. Some said it was a prank pulled by seniors with a radio transmitter and a stolen building map. Some said it was a homeless guy who got in through the pool doors. Some said it was an ex who showed up for a girl and made a mess of everything. None of those rumors matched the parts I lived. Here's what I know for sure from the boring adult meetings that followed and the one article that ran in the local paper 3 days later. No weapon was found. No intruder on camera. The feed for our hallway, the one the old monitors in our room could have been connected to, was unavailable for 47 minutes. Unavailable is a hell of a word. It sounds better than broken, and less specific than someone turned it off. The announcement system ran through a small closet in the front office with a mixer, a mic, and a computer. The tech guy swore he'd been at that computer the whole time, hands on the board. He's the kind of guy who keeps the school district's secrets because they're things like, the superintendent can't remember his password, not because he's good at covering tracks. He cried when he said it wasn't him. The emails with the weekly code words. The thread for that day had been opened 6 times from Ms. Patel's computer while we were huddled in the corner with her. There was a log. It showed the exact times. One of them was the same minute I got the photo of our room. 2 other classrooms got the all-clear texts. Both were in the old wing, not far from ours. One of those teachers was out. The sub panicked and let the kids go early because of it. They were intercepted by 2 cops in the science hall. I try not to think about the gap in time between those kids stepping into the hall and 2 cops realizing they were kids. Administration said the phrases technical malfunction and third-party interference a lot. Both are true in their way. Neither explains the breadth. The week after, Ms. Patel quit. Not like slammed a door quit. She resigned mid-year, and we all hugged her and gave her a book of notes, and she cried the way you cry when you've decided to stop pretending something is working. She said it was for her health. I believed her. You use up a piece of yourself keeping kids quiet in the dark while something taps your school's fight song on a door. The elk head went missing. The costume body was in the drama cage like always. The brown fake fur folded on a hanger. The head was nowhere. The drama teacher accused the athletes of stealing it for a party. The athletes accused the drama kids. The assistant principal sent an email that said, "Please return the elk head. No questions asked." No one returned it. That spring, we found a page in the 1998 yearbook. It was senior superlatives, and there was a picture of a kid named Benjamin Benny Crawford who'd won most school spirit. He wore the elk head in the photo, crooked, the mesh eyes turned slightly off. Someone had scratched his face in that picture years ago, not deeply, just enough to make a nest of white lines. In black pen under his name, someone had written, "He never left." We asked Ms. Robertson, the main librarian, what happened to Benny Crawford. She said, flat. He drowned in the pool during a lockdown drill. The doors jammed. It was a long time ago. We said, "We don't have a pool." She paused like she could see the pool in her head. "We did," she said. "They paved it over for the auto shop. I did the fast math you do when you're trying to avoid letting your gut catch up. There is no way a kid drowned during a lockdown drill with a mascot head on. The mascot head goes to games, not drills. And surely, if something like that had happened, someone would have mentioned it. A memorial, or a plaque, or one of those scholarship funds that show up in assembly speeches. But you know how schools forget things on purpose. You know how institutions decide which ghosts they can afford to carry. We graduated. Life filled in with jobs and apartments and microwaves with food splatters no one can identify. I learned to sleep again. I changed my phone number twice. For a while after, I would wake at 2:17, like a dog trained to a whistle no one else can hear. I'd stare at the red digits on the nightstand and wait for my phone to buzz, and it wouldn't, because I had made it so it couldn't. Last year, the district sent an invitation for an alumni night, free tickets to a Friday game, tour of the renovated library, photo op with the Elk. The email used 3 exclamation points like that would sell it. Jordan texted me a screenshot and a skull emoji and then, "Wanna go?" We went. Maybe because we wanted to prove we weren't still kids. Maybe because we wanted to be teenagers again for a night where the biggest fear was losing our voices screaming at a bad call. The school looked both exactly the same and wrong. They'd painted over the brown brick with off-white. The library had a teen space with bean bags that looked like marshmallows. The old wing had the same green linoleum, but the yearbook room was now a creative lab with a 3D printer no one was using. We walked past room 214 and both tapped the door frame without saying why. The motion sensor flicked yellow and then green. "Remember when?" Jordan started. "Yup," I said too quickly, because if we named it, we would have to honor it, and I wasn't ready to build an altar in a hallway. We made it to the gym. The banners had new dates. The pep band played off-key like always. The Elk trotted along the baseline, the head bouncing, the antlers more symmetrical now like they'd finally bought a new set. The Elk made it to our section and did a goofy dance. The crowd loved it. The kids around us made the chant, "Da da 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 da." I felt Jordan stiffen next to me. No one was doing anything wrong. It was just a chant. The Elk turned and looked straight at us. I know it was some sophomore inside the foam. I know that. But the head tilted too far to the left. That old wrong angle like the unbalanced antlers were back, and the mesh eyes caught the gym lights and turned them into 2 bright coins of nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I hadn't given my number to the school. It was new. It had been new for a year. I looked down. Unknown number. All clear. I showed Jordan. He said nothing. He looked past me, past the court, to the alcove where there used to be a door to the old pool. It was now a blank wall with the kind of paint that covers old sins, but doesn't fool people who lived through them. After the game, they gave alumni a tour of the renovated library like the email promised. The librarians were fresh out of grad school, excited in a way that made me feel older than I am. They had a display of old yearbooks. Someone had stuck Post-its on funny hairstyles from the 80s. The 1998 book was there too. I opened it to senior superlatives with hands that had gone cold. Benjamin Crawford's face wasn't scratched out anymore. The page was clean. New. Like they'd reprinted or replaced it. Like the book remembered being altered and then decided it hadn't been. Under his name, the space where he never left used to be was empty. But when I tilted the page in the light, you could see a faint groove of ink. The ghost imprint of words pressed hard enough with a pen to leave a scar. Jordan whispered, "Do you see?" "Yeah," I said. We left early because nostalgia decays fast when you feel watched. On the way out, we cut through the old wing. Up close, the paint job couldn't hide the smaller violence. Chipped corners, gum under ledges, scratches where backpacks had scraped 1,000 times. I didn't mean to, but I put my hand on the closet door in the new creative lab where our supplies used to be. It had that cheap hollow core. My palm remembered the slight flex under pressure. I closed my eyes and breathed. Dust. Paper. The sweet stale note. Faint now. Like a memory in a room where someone had opened windows. The intercom popped. Not in the hall. Not loud. It was from inside the old room. Just a tiny pop. Like a throat clearing in a dead place. Students in room 214. A voice said, rich with fluorescent hum. Remain where you are. We both froze. I could feel Jordan's arm hair rise. I could hear a basketball bounce 2 buildings away. The voice didn't repeat itself. It didn't do the chime. It didn't try to convince us of anything. We backed away like the ground could bite. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was 2:17 in the afternoon. Sun bright, cars backing out, leftover popcorn stuck to the soles of my shoes. Unknown number. All clear. I blocked it. I blocked the next 4. At the light, a van cut us off and Jordan swore, and it felt good to be in a world where the worst thing was someone being a jerk on purpose and not on behalf of a building that learned our names. That night, I woke up at 2:17. I walked to the kitchen because pretending you're not awake is a lie your brain refuses to accept when something in you knows to expect a message. The house was quiet in the way a house is when it's waiting to become memory. I turned my phone on. I told myself I wouldn't look. I looked. 9 new messages from unknown numbers. All clear. All clear. All clear. I stared until the words blurred and then sharpened again. I thought of the breath at the door and the hand-tapping school spirit like a joke we told on ourselves. I thought of how many drills we had practiced, how we had trained the building to respond, how we had taught it our patterns, our passwords, our chimes, how the system had been taught what convincing sounds like. People make haunted houses in October and pay to scream. We made a haunted school on accident and were told to remain where we were. By morning, the messages had stopped. They always stop when the sun turns everything back into furniture and routine. I changed my number again. I changed carriers. I moved apartments. I switched jobs. The messages found me 3 months later in a break room with a microwave that said 12 o'clock forever. I told my girlfriend when we started dating that I don't do horror movies. She thought I was kidding because I'm the guy who cracks jokes when the power blinks. On our 5th date, she asked what scared me as a kid. I told her about basements and the ocean, and the idea that if I ran upstairs too slowly, something would grab my ankle. Then I told her why I keep my phone in airplane mode from 2 to 3 a.m. If you want to get to know someone, tell them about the rules you follow when you're alone. She laughed in that gentle, I love your weird brain way and said, you know, if you don't look at them, they don't exist. I hope she's right. 2 months ago, my therapist put words around what happened that day. She said, you experienced a violation of boundaries by an anonymous force, which is a generous clinical way to describe a building whispering through a vent. She said we look for agency in systems when they break, because agency is easier to fight than randomness. She's right. I want there to be a someone. A kid named Benny with a grudge. A janitor with keys he never turned in. A hacker in a car in the parking lot with a laptop and too much time. A drunk. A ghost. The truth is, I don't care who or what did it. The truth I don't like saying is that the part that stayed with me wasn't the hand or the breath or even the tapping. It was the way the fake all clear felt more convincing than the real one because it said what we wanted to hear. It's August now. I work the overnight at a hospital, which is funny because I have to turn my phone on at 2 a.m. for calls no one wants to make. I walk past rooms where machines keep people breathing and think about how fragile a quiet breath on the other side of a door can be. Last week, a citywide text came through at 2:15, the kind that says, "Severe weather warning." Every phone on the floor buzzed at once, and we all pulled them out because that is what we do when something bigger than us tells us to. 2 minutes later, a message popped up on my screen from an unknown number. All clear. I didn't block it. I didn't turn my phone off. I put the phone in my locker and went to check on a patient who sleeps through storms. On the way back, I passed a maintenance closet. The door was slightly open. Inside, a fan moved air through a metal grate. I stood there, hand on the frame, listening to the sound of the fan's blades, trying very hard not to count. Someone down the hall called my name. I went. That night, all night, the automatic doors at the front entrance kept opening with no one near them. The security guard wrote it down. "Faulty sensor," he said. We all nodded because you can live your whole life that way if you commit. When I got home, it was 7:30 a.m. Sun in my eyes, coffee making its small noises on the counter. I pulled the elk photo from the old yearbook up on my laptop, found it online in a digitized archive someone had made. Benny looked like every guy you knew who peaked at 17, handsome in a way that reads as bland 10 years later. The comment box under it said, "Comments are closed." The little counter next to the heart icon said 214. I closed the tab. I took a shower. I did the normal things. This is the part where if this were a campfire story, I'd tell you something stupid like, "And then the intercom turned on in my apartment." But life isn't that obvious. Life keeps the volume just low enough that you can ignore it until you can't. At exactly 2:17 this afternoon, while I was pushing a cart of laundry down the ER hallway, the overhead speakers popped. A voice said, "Remain where you are." Then nothing. No chime. Just the feeling of 100 people looking up at a ceiling like it could look back. Everyone went back to work because that's what you do when you can't verify where the voice is coming from. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. All clear. I didn't block it. I looked up. The automatic doors at the entrance opened for no one at all. Sunlight poured in. The security guard wrote it down. I'm telling you this now because I want it out of me. Because if you've ever been in a lockdown, you know the weird mix of boredom and terror, the way time stretches and eats its own tail. You know how language goes soft around the edges when you use it too much. Lockdown, shelter, secure, clear. You know how the intercom voice flattens everything into the same shape. If you're reading this and thinking you'd be brave, maybe you would. Maybe you'd yell through the closet door and make jokes and keep everyone from crying. Maybe you'd move the cabinet and open the door because you want to be in charge of the next part. Maybe the sound of the mascot head on the counter wouldn't land in you like it did in me. But if your phone ever buzzes in the middle of the night and an unknown number says all clear, do me one favor. Do not move. Do not look. Do not try to prove anything to yourself. Stay where you are. Wait for the chime.